On a street where almost no one is Italian anymore, there's a sidewalk in Little Italy that still smells like Naples. This street has seen a neighborhood rise, a neighborhood vanish, and one of the most famous murders in mob history. But the story that matters most on Hester Street is the one that's still open. Today, Hester Street belongs mostly to memory. The tenement windows that once framed thousands of immigrant lives now overlook high-end boutiques and modern storefronts. Visitors walk these blocks searching for the ghosts of a legendary underworld, guided by Hollywood films and old police reports. Yet, on this single stretch of pavement, the hiss of steam from an espresso machine still cuts through the noise of the surrounding city. This clash of eras raises a quiet, pressing question. When the families have all packed up and left, what does Little Italy actually mean? While the surrounding neighborhood surrendered its heritage to the shifting tides of Manhattan, this corner held its ground. This surviving storefront stands as a living answer, refusing to let the block become a museum. In the 1880s, a massive migration began to redraw the map of Lower Manhattan. Over 4 million Italians crossed the Atlantic to escape poverty, land scarcity, and political fragmentation in the South. Many arrived through Castle Garden, carrying little more than wooden trunks and the dialects of their home provinces. They packed into the narrow tenement grid of the Lower East Side, converting dark, crowded rooms into a vibrant community. This was never intended as a tourist destination. It was built as a dense, living village inside the city, a sprawling enclave that at its height spanned roughly 50 blocks, stretching from Houston Street down to Worth Street. Within this urban territory, regional lines were drawn with absolute precision. Neighbors did not just identify as Italian, they identified by their home village and province. The streets became distinct regional sub-enclaves. Immigrants from Calabria settled on Mott Street. Sicilians, many of whom were farmers and laborers, established their lives on Elizabeth Street. Neapolitans claimed Mulberry Street, turning the pavement into an open-air theater of daily life. This Neapolitan presence centered heavily around the intersection of Mulberry and Hester. Here, families recreated the social fabric of Naples, setting up mutual aid societies, regional clubs, and small food stalls. This specific geographic claim on these blocks was deliberate, establishing a cultural home that anchored the community for decades. To understand this neighborhood is to understand that Hester Street was built on these strong regional loyalties, establishing a legacy where a Naples-named storefront on this corner would eventually carry a meaning far larger than simple commerce. In 1972, at 191 Hester Street, Anna Silvestri opened a small storefront with a clear, simple purpose. She wanted to serve hot espresso and fresh pastries to the working-class families of the block. The name she chose to paint on the glass, Caffe Napoli, was a quiet homecoming for the Neapolitans who had claimed this stretch of pavement decades before. It began as a modest, narrow room, defined by the steady hiss of steam and the heavy aroma of dark roasted beans. But Anna looked at the dark tenements and decided the street needed air. On a clear morning, she picked up her metal tables and chairs, carried them out the front door, and set them directly onto the concrete. By taking the business outside, she established what the family claims was the very first sidewalk cafe in Little Italy. It was a simple, deliberate act that transformed a basic storefront into an open-air piazza, an outdoor living room where neighbors could gather under the open sky. Over these tables, the daily rituals of the old country were re-established. Neighbors paused to argue over cards, trade stories of home, and watch the neighborhood drift by. Anna became the maternal anchor of the block, a constant presence behind the counter who watched over the corner with quiet pride. That daily labor eventually passed to her daughter, Gina, and her son-in-law, Anthony Fontana. They inherited more than an espresso machine and a lease. They inherited a responsibility to the memory of the street. As the years wore on, The old families packed up for the outer boroughs, and the demographic tide of the old neighborhood went all the way out. But the Silvestris stayed. Gina and Anthony kept setting the tables on the pavement, serving the same dark coffee to those who remained and those who returned to search for the past. Under their care, the café became a repository for the collective memory of Hester Street. It remained on the corner as a keeper of a vanishing world, a physical anchor for a past that was slipping away. On April 7, 1972, at roughly 4:30 in the morning, the quiet of the neighborhood shattered. Mafioso Joseph Crazy Joe Gallo walked out of Umberto's clam house at Mulberry and Hester. Gunmen opened fire, and Gallo collapsed, dying in the middle of the Hester Street intersection. This sudden violence turned the corner into one of the most notorious crime scenes in American history, quickly claimed by Bob Dylan's ballads and Martin Scorsese's cinema. Yet, while tourists and cameras arrived to chase the ghost on the corner, the lasting story of Hester Street was already taking shape just a few doors down, where a family kept showing up to light the espresso machine. As the decades wore on, the physical map of Little Italy began to collapse. What once was a sprawling 50-block immigrant stronghold thinned to 20, then to a handful, until the historic enclave was compressed into just 3 blocks of Mulberry Street. Landlords were offered millions to sell off generations of brick and mortar, and old-world families packed up for the outer boroughs. By the time of the 2010 census, a stark milestone was reached. Not a single resident in the neighborhood had been born in Italy. Even Umberto's clam house, long a cornerstone of local fame, eventually closed its original doors and moved away. Yet, on this quiet corner of Hester Street, the tables never left the pavement. Caffe Napoli remained open, continuing its sidewalk service. While the surrounding world thinned out and rebranded for tourism, this single storefront stood firm, serving as a living keeper of the community that once built these streets. If you want to discover more hidden histories of New York, subscribe to our channel. Every September, the pavement of Hester Street disappears beneath the lights of the Feast of San Gennaro. This Neapolitan ritual began on these blocks in 1926, honoring the patron saint of Naples, a sacred thread connecting the protector, the old country, and the name painted on the cafe's glass. The festival brings massive crowds, but the truest survival of this community lives in the quieter daily rhythm of the sidewalk. It persists in the memory of Anna working behind the counter, Gina preparing orders before regulars even speak, and Anthony pulling out a chair as an everyday act of hospitality. Through these simple gestures, the family preserves the soul of the old neighborhood. This storefront transcends commerce. It is a keeper of Hester Street. The tide of history went all the way out, but this warmth remains. Hester Street's true legend isn't the ghost on the corner, but the family still serving espresso. Not a business, a keeper. Please subscribe for more forgotten history.